week on page 180, we go back into the spoilerverse to have a long overdue spoiler-filled discussion about all things Rings of Power Season 2. We're going to go full nerd on you this week, guys. Trust me, it is going to be intense as we get into Lord of the Rings for, I think, the first time ever we're doing this on air. And joining me to discuss all this is my long time low blows and podcasting colleagues. He's our resident Kaza Dum Dum. It is Gerry O'Brien. Gerry.
Kaza Dum Dum. They should make that into a candy in America. Kaza Dum Dums, perfect for your children. Just watch out for the Balrog. Fucking hell.
Gerry, you're very welcome back. This has been a conversation that's been long overdue for us. We were obviously we work together in low blows, and guys, keep an eye, by the way. We'll have Survivor Series details very, very shortly. I'm very looking forward to our theme for this year. Even Gerry doesn't know what it is, so yeah, that's going to be coming very shortly.
He likes surprising me at the last minute, and then I have to go in wearing a mini skirt or something. I'm like, you bastard.
Yeah, literally when like Low Blows came back this year, I was like, Gerry, by the way, we're back and it's online.
And my response was, well, my fee has doubled.
But Gerry, look, we obviously chat a lot on this show. We present Star Jers together, and that'd be what this audience would probably know you as. A Star Wars obsessive, and obviously the world's knowing you as that, like, or at least the nation. You're going national on us, aren't they? Like you're all over the place. But like we were chatting at Low Blows, the All Out party a few weeks ago. We pretty much spent half the night talking about this. So this has been a long time in the making, and what people might know about you is that you're a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Like, this is probably up there with Star Wars for you. Talk us through kind of your obsession with Lord of the Rings and what it means to you.
Well, you know, when between childhood and adulthood, you kind of have these obsessions with certain things, and there's certain things that you love. My first one was Jurassic Park, and I will always love Jurassic Park because that very first film was just perfect for me. I think it was absolutely great. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, I have Star Trek and Star Wars as my great loves. You know, I was brought up watching that. But I think the thing that I love the most is Lord of the Rings. One of my first tattoos was actually the writing from the ring, and I have them on both forearms. Yeah, there you go. There, a lot of people. That design that you have there, a lot of people tend to get that maybe on their chest or on their arm. Some people get it wrapped. But when I spoke to one of the most famous Lord of the Rings actors and showed him my tattoos, he said he'd never seen them done that way before. It was very unique, and he thought it was great. I'm not going to start name dropping now. We'll do that at the end of the show. But for me, Lord of the Rings, a good friend of mine that, you know, you kind of, with friendships, they come and go, but you always will have those strong friendships, even if you don't see each other for 20 years. A good friend of mine that I hadn't seen since school, I met him in the early 2000s, and he told me, "Oh, have you read The Lord of the Rings?" I said, No, I've never read the books. He says, "Well, they're making them into a film." And I said, "Oh, great." So I thought I'd read a little bit of the books before I saw the films. And I was kind of halfway through the fellowship. I said, "I'm not reading anymore." I said, not because I didn't like it. I was like, I don't want this spoiled. I'm like, I want to watch it, and then I can read it afterwards. And I remember at the end of the first film, I was actually sitting, and you'll notice, a lot of Irish people will notice, sitting in Savoy 1, the best screen that ever was in Ireland, and rest in peace of Savoy 1. I remember sitting in there, me and my father watching it. And after it was finished, I went, holy shit. Yes. I'm like, there's 3 of these? What the hell? And they're out once a year for the next 3 years. Oh, it just blew my mind. And even now, like, I kind of, even in the room here, I have things that are going on the wall, and I'm designing things in with Lord of the Rings in mind. Like, I've Lord of the Rings cushions, of Lord of the Rings sign on the door. There's Lord of the Rings pictures gone on the wall. I was actually looking at Anduril, Aragorn's sword, that's going to be going on the wall. I already have Sting that was given to me for my 21st, actually, by Mr. Vic Viper, that we know very well, and that's going on the wall as well. And various other things I have to get. Both of Gandalf's staffs, they're going on the wall as well. So it's going to be a proper Lord of the Rings shrine in here by the time I'm finished. Well, the shrine to many things, but mostly to Lord of the Rings. But I just have been obsessed with it. The characters have just, I don't know, I just kind of, they really resonated with me. And ever since, especially the Two Towers, when my favorite film is Return to King, because I loved the Ride of the Rohirrim. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But I think the one thing that hit me most through any of the films was Sam's speech near the end of the Two Towers, and it was like a gut punch when you hear it. You're like, holy shit, this is just amazing. The way he goes on about things are worth fighting for, and there's always hope. I'm like, oh Christ Almighty, like just absolutely brilliant. Even now, I'm kind of like, oh, just brilliant.
Yeah.
So these films have meant a lot to me. And then I know the Hobbit got a lot of flack as well, but I've loved the Hobbit. So when I heard that Amazon were bringing out a Lord of the Rings series, I'm like, yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice. I love that feeling that you described there of like a new nerd level unlocked. When you find something and you watch it and you're like, holy shit, this is going to be like, I'm going to spend decades of my life obsessing over this now. I came at it from slightly different point of view. I was speaking about this with Kev on our show What You Watching a few weeks ago, where he's someone who's obsessed with the movies but has never watched this show, and I was recommending it to him, and I'm like, you need to watch this show, especially if you like Lord of the Rings that much. When I was speaking to him, I kind of explained, like, for me, you've probably got like Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, I'm at nerd level 10. Like Star Wars, probably nerd level 9. Marvel, I would probably be, around the 7. Lord of the Rings previously, based just off the movies, I'd probably have been at a 6. Okay. And now that included, I've read all the books, I've read the Silmarillion, I've done deep dives and stuff like that because I'm a weirdo. And that's what a 6 means to me. Like, still spent hundreds of hours, but that's only around the 6 on my level, right? Rings of Power has probably brought that up to an 8 or a 9. And that isn't to say that I like Rings of Power more than the movies. I do have a special place. Like, I've got a list of movies that are like the greatest of all time, and all 3 Lord of the Rings movies are on there, okay? But they never were like the top 10, 20 in the way that they're probably going to be now. I'm going to do a rewatch, especially because we have the War for the Rohirrim coming out in December. So I'm going to do a rewatch with everything I've kind of gained from Rings of Power. But what I love about Rings of Power is the little nuggets they bring in, and how a weekly TV show of this is just giving me reasons to get deeper and deeper into the lore of it all and just enhance everything that I have. And again, a lot of what the show brings out is the creators are nerds themselves. They love this like as much as anyone does. And again, what they're doing is enhancing kind of canon that's already out there, but also kind of filling in blanks as well. And condensing things, which is upsetting people too. But what that does is it gives you those little nuggets that you can then get stuck into. Although it is difficult because having read a lot of the source material, if I haven't actually read the full text and I've read the Wikipedia pages or the deep dives and so on, but having like gone into a lot of the source material, they are making a lot of changes, and I think that's what upset a lot of people. So, especially with season 1, I think season 2 is kind of winning a lot of people back around. How did you feel when this first came out? For example, and guys, there's going to be spoilers. It's into the spoilerverse. That's what it's going to be. Don't at me. We're going to talk about this full spoiler. We're not going to go ahead and tell you things that if we know it, you like, we're not going to spoil ahead in the plot, but we'll speak up to the end of season 2 and everything we know that kind of informs that. But like Gandalf is in this. And we kind of knew at the end of season 1, but they only confirmed it in the most recent episode this week that it was Gandalf. And that upset a lot of people. And that's just one thing, because they're condensing the timelines in order to make an exciting, coherent TV show in a way that you wouldn't have been able to, because what kind of when you're talking about the Silmarillion, when you're talking about the epilogues in Lord of the Rings, and a lot of the places that this text is taken from takes place over thousands of years. So you had to condense it. What were your thoughts on season one and how that kind of did that jar for you as a super fan? Like what how did you feel about what they did?
It's kind of like my opinion that we've talked about with Star Wars before, is that a lot of people they've given about every single film and series that have come out since Disney took over Star Wars. And of course, they even gave out about the prequels when George Lucas, the master of Star Wars, was given out about. They were giving out about them as well. So, people were going to give out about this. The way I look at it is, you're giving me Lord of the Rings. I'm going to give it a fair shout, unless you have completely changed characters or you're going to kill characters off that shouldn't be killed off, like Game of Thrones, killing characters off that haven't died in the fucking books. That shit pisses me off. So when you really change a story round, I'm like, oh no. But I'm very much here for this. I know the fact that Gandalf is literally thousands of years ahead of himself here. Literally thousands of years ahead of himself here. Do I care? No. Do you want to know why? Because I get fucking Gandalf on TV. That's why. I don't care if he's 1,000 years or 2,000 years ahead of himself. I couldn't give a shit. What I'm getting is Gandalf. What I'm getting is really good, compelling characters. And not only that, and I actually don't know the actor that plays Gandalf. My God, he's been good. It's literally like looking at a young Ian McKellen. Now, I'm not saying that he looks like him. I mean, like even his acting style is like he's confused. He doesn't really know who he is. And like, what am I doing here? What the hell is going on? And I'm like, I'm actually loving this. He has been fantastic. A lot of the acting in this has been absolutely amazing. I've even seen people giving out about the fact that, look at Galadriel. She said Galadriel and Sauron. And I'm like, if you actually were a fan of Lord of the Rings, you would actually look it up, and you would look, and it would actually be phonetically spelled out for you how fucking Tolkien wanted these words to be said. So if you're giving out about that, you're not a real fan, and fuck off. But season one, I thought was fantastic, and all I wanted was more.
Yeah.
And my Jesus, did we get it in season two?
That's,
like, woo!
And I think that's the bargain that we have to make of, like, again, because I'm not sure. Again, I think the timeline, I don't think that Gandalf is 1,000 years ahead of himself. I think what they've done is take the timeline and squeeze it, So like this is the telling of the end of the Second Age is essentially the timeline that we're in, and the movies that we've seen are the Third Age. And there's talk about more content coming out, more movies, maybe a new trilogy, and that's probably our first time in Middle Earth tipping into the Fourth Age. This is now post-Tolkien. I think you have to look at the bargain that we get for getting more content, and there has to be an acceptance of this. I spoke about this, a similar kind of vibe that we've had to adjust to, and now we're used to it. Okay, I spoke about this when I was speaking with Tom on our September at the Movie show just last week, and it is, for me, it's the same bargain as getting, we're talking about Beetlejuice, and it's the same bargain as getting like reboots of franchises that we love. Hollywood didn't get it right at the start. It came across very cheesy, money grabbing, like it sold out a lot of the properties that we loved and so on, but they're getting it now. They understand how to make it better. And we also understand that, we want these characters, we want this content, and we're more accepting of it as well. I think we need to understand that if we want this content, we're going to need to give artists license to make it and change it as is needed. Yeah. Now, that is complicated sometimes by the likes of George R.R. Martin coming out and slating House of the Dragon, and the creative changes that they made there. And that, again, ties fandom's loyalty to George R.R. Martin and splits it with the show. And I'd appreciate if authors, George R.R. Martin, you got the bag, you got more money than you probably know what to do with it in your life. You have to accept that this is now not your content anymore, in the way that I wish the likes of J.K. Rowling would accept that with Harry Potter and let go of the reins and let it kind of go on. But when we look at this universe specifically and what Tolkien would have wanted, Tolkien was very much of the opinion, I'm going to create a sandbox, but I want you guys to be able to come in and play with it. I want people to be able to mess around with it and have fun with it. And if you can create fun stories, Tolkien was not precious about this. So if you're precious about this, and you're precious about like little tiny changes that are made for the sake of getting this excellent TV show as it is becoming fast, then you're missing out. That is your loss. And this is the bargain we have to make, that if we want this content, that's it. If you want to sit by yourself and read these stories and not be able to share them with other people and not be able to enjoy them, but know that you know the most about all of these things and you're the expert and you're the only person who really understands it. If you want to live that gremlin lifestyle, then fine, do it. But the rest of us want to share these stories, want to enjoy them, want to celebrate them. We want to have conversations like this with other people who love them. And this is the trade-off that we have to make, because you can't make a TV show that's coherent, that's spread out over thousands of years as this was. So I love this, and I feel that it comes from the right. It does have to have certain conditions. It has to come from the right place. People have to appreciate it. It should respect to a degree, but not be limited by the original creator's wishes to a point. And I think this ticks all those boxes. And I'm like, yeah, give me it. Okay, I'll accept the changes. This is the story. I can get it into my head that if you break canon for a story, I'm like, I can understand it, but I don't think some people can. That I'm like, this is this creative person's interpretation and their story. It's their turn to play in the Lord of the Rings sandbox. And this is a story they're telling me. And I can choose whether to like it or accept it or not, but yeah, I respect it, you know? So I think that's what we're getting here. Let's get on to season 2 then. We're going to kind of dip quickly through this. We could talk for 6 hours. We did at the AEW All Out party. But we could easily talk for a long time about this, but we're going to try just catch some of the highlights. Season 2 before the finale, because I do want to give time to the finale itself. Leading up to this week, what were like your favorite moments from this, favorite episode? Like, what sticks out when you think back to season 2? What stands out?
There's so much.
Yeah.
I think let's talk about even characters here. I think some of the MVPs of this show have been Celebrimbor, Anatar Sauron, and Adar. And I just think the acting has been off the scale. Like, so even some of the things that, like, I have loved the Dwarven storyline. I have absolutely loved it, because I think the characters are quite relatable. You know, you've got this son who's not quite accepted by his father. You've got the wife who's pushing him to, you know, be more prominent and to do things and do that. Then you've got the complication of Anatar and the rings, and I have loved it. You know, even I've seen people giving out about even something as simple as, oh, the rings are different to what they were in the movies. I'm like, and so what? The movies were 20 years ago. You can't always have exactly what you wanted from 20 years ago. It's like Star Wars. You can't exactly have everything from the fucking original trilogy. You have to do something different. This is, you like, it just pisses me off. Like, we've been given such a great show, and all people do is give out about it. I think all 4 of the main storylines have really, really hit this time. Some to a lesser extent, but it's just, I think it's just they haven't been given enough screen time, I suppose. You know, I would have liked to see more of Numenor. I would have liked to see more with Gandalf and the Harfoots. But I haven't not liked it. I have loved it. You know, I think parts of this, like that even that last episode, there was so much packed into one episode. You're like, holy shit, how did they do this? You know, I was like, wow.
Has there been like an episode or a moment where this is like, you're like, wow, that's the one for me? Or an arc, even.
Yeah, I think a lot of this season, people were waiting for action. And I was kind of waiting for it myself. I'm like, oh, I thought we were going to get some sort of big battle here. What the hell is going on? And then the siege of Eregion happens. So we're into episode 7. You're like, oh, they're full on they're full on Game of Thrones in this second last episode. They're going to give us this big battle. I'm like, I'm fucking here for this. Oh, and we finally got a big battle, because, like, even in the previous season, we did get fighting, but it wasn't on the scale that we would have expected from a show that was announced that was going to be spending 1 billion on it.
Yeah.
You know, so when we got this, and you see the trebuchets walking up, you see this, like, thousands of orcs. So you think he's only brought a couple of hundred with him, and then you look out, him and Galadriel, like Adar and Galadriel talking. He's like, no, I brought everybody. And you're like, oh shit, oh god, he's got a whole army with him. And then you see the siege the next episode. You're like, Jesus Christ, this is just It's epic.
Yeah.
Like this was, I'm not going to say it was the Two Towers or the Battle of Minas Tirith or anything like that, but it was for a show that it is kind of still finding its feet. It's still starting out. We know what's to possibly come by the end of this show, because they said 5 seasons. So if they get to 5 seasons, we know how this show ends.
They're getting
and
the
it's
viewers.
going to be fucking epic. You think the Battle of Minas Tirith is good? You think the Battle of Helm's Deep is good? You ain't seen nothing yet when it comes to the last battle, the Battle of the Last Alliance. Holy sweet Mother of Divine Jesus, and that's how my mother would say it. My God, it's going to be epic. So you need to give them time. They're cooking right now, and they're cooking very well. So I think the Siege of Eregion was fantastic. But if you're talking about one specific moment, one shot, nobody can disagree with me on this. When Durin picks up his axe, tells his son he's sorry.
Okay, you're getting ahead of yourself.
I am getting, but like
stop,
what moment
I want to talk about that too. Let me talk about it, right? Okay, we're gonna get to that, right? Don't be getting ahead of yourself. But I agree. You're right though. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Before we get to the finale, season 2. I don't know if the Siege of Eregion wasn't as good as Helm's Deep, Battle of the Bastards. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not willing to commit to it fully. I need to let it settle with me. But the battle itself, probably not, but the everything else around it, you know, the Durin not being able to help Elrond being like, he's gonna come. Not in that way, that'd be weird. So inappropriate for what's happening. You've got the Celebrimbor kind of Sauron kind of face off, and the revelation there, and kind of seeing Sauron, like, I want to say a full power, but he wasn't. He was essentially just manipulating things by like slightly moving his finger, and you're like, oh shit, oh, now we're getting to see what Sauron is. Like the Adar factor, I thought they just nailed it. I thought this reminded me of it's like Game of Thrones is what I thought of, and it reminds me of Blackwater. And Blackwater is arguably my favorite battle in Game of Thrones, and the reason it is just because, not because the battle itself, like Battle of the Bastards is a better battle if you're just judging it on technical ability and the quality of the battle itself. But why Blackwater sticks with me is just the storyline elements they managed to weave through the battle. Tyrion's speech, where it's like, there are brave men at our doors, let's go kill them. You know, Joffrey running off and being like, is it urgent, mother? Do I need to go? Is it urgent? Like the little things that are iconically weaved throughout that, I felt that this showed that it could do this. Was this a perfect season? No. It was not. It's an imperfect show, but where the show is, what I like about the show is it's a show that's finding itself. There was, like you said, a lot of moments in it, or a lot of arcs in it where I'm like, oh geez, I haven't even spent time with them. Like the Isildur kind of arc, like Numenor as well, just kind of felt like there were some high highs. Like you had, for example, Kemen killing Vandil at one point, like in episode 5, like that was a Game of Thrones style death where you're like, holy shit, he can't die. Oh, but he's definitely dead. And like it just came out of nowhere. And that's what I liked about this season. Was it perfect? No, but where it started to embrace things that we're not used to from Lord of the Rings and then use them to advance. We got some horror elements in this season. We got like surprise twists. We got like a level of violence and graphicness that we've never gotten in Lord of the Rings, but it works. It fits. It is adult. It is good. But what I like about it is it's not trying to be Game of Thrones. It's not trying to be adult. It's not like, there's not like loads of sex in it. There's not loads of nudity or crassness or cursing or anything. It still is very much coded in that Lord of the Rings kind of, it could be for children, but it's way too violent now, you know what I mean? But it's still got that light versus darkness kind of simplicity to it at the same time. But it just really kind of majestically sits in that, like, bathes in that lore that it loves and wants to kind of share with you and so on. And then there's the quieter moments, like the Tom Bombadil scenes and stuff like that as well. Like, I thought that was brilliant this season, like, again, and I think how the show makes time for that. There's a scene we'll talk about in the finale where I'm like, I'm so glad that in this epic finale, when you had so many different things to do, you just made a moment for joy. And the show does that quite a lot. And really gets that, like, music and happiness and fellowship is as much part of Lord of the Rings as orcs and battles and axes and swords and heroes and fighting for the Middle Earth and stuff like that. Really liked it. Let's talk about the finale, because we're bursting out of the seams here, and I think we need to. Okay, the way we usually do this, though, is we usually have me come on and give an alternate recap, bringing us through what happened in the finale. Okay, we're gonna change it up for better or for worse here, and he's done no prep for this. And the reason that we're going to change it up is because a couple of weeks ago, Gerry, essentially, we've been voice noting about this vociferously over the past few weeks. Gerry sent me a voice note where he essentially did an alternate recap of an episode, and I was listening to it at work, and I had to step outside because I was laughing so much. Because, like, if you know Gerry, you'll know sometimes he'll forget names, he'll only remember things, and he has his own imitable way. So we're going to give this a go. We've never done this before. And I told him specifically, don't write it, don't prep it, just go off the top of your head. Gerry, if you wouldn't mind talking us through what happened in the final episode of episode 8 of season 2 of Rings of Power, and then we'll kind of discuss how we felt about it on the other side. Go for it.
I don't know. I haven't watched it. Well, I think, you know, right, okay, final episode, we're all anticipating, it's all a big thing, we don't know what's going to happen, there's so much to go through in one episode. Is it going to be really long? Is it going to be short? Are we going to be disappointed? What the fuck is going on? If you were disappointed by this episode, absolutely piss off, because it's as simple as that. It was a great finale, it was huge, it was brilliant. That sounded like Donald Trump. Please don't take it like that. Fuck that. Like, we start off with, of course, we see what the hell did we start off? Oh yeah, the dwarves. So we go in and you know, good old Durin, he's there, and he's like, I know, yeah, Jesus, what's going on? And he finds his wife, and his poor wife's like, don't go down there. You don't follow me. Don't go down there. You don't follow me. I'm like, it's like talking to the wife. I'm like, I need to have a shit. Leave me alone. He goes down and he finds his father, and his father's trying to hammer the wall here. He's like, come on, take the ring off. Take the ring off. Come on, that's fine. Take the ring off. I'm not taking the ring off. Take the ring off. Take the ring off. Just fucking do it. Oh, look, I found all the meat. My God, Father, it's amazing. What the fuck? What's that light? What's going on here? What the? Oh, sweet Jesus. Yeah, this is what we should open the door for that. Gave us one of the best scenes in Lord of the Rings ever. And I do mean ever. From the films to The Hobbit to The Lord of the Rings to this season. This one specific moment, Durin takes the ring off. He realizes he did wrong, takes the ring off, turns to his son, tells him he's sorry, picks up his axe, and gets a fucking obliterated by the Balrog. And that's why it's called as Durin's Bane. We then go to Eregion, where the place is fucked. Let's be honest with you. It's completely bollocks. It's going to be flat. We don't know what the hell is going on. And then we see poor Celebrimbor looking like a porcupine because he's full of fucking arrows. Sauron decides to fucking stick him with a load of arrows. Or he's like, he's in pain, but he's still defiant. You're like, I beat you, I go to heaven. You're going to hell. Go fuck yourself. He gets stuck. He gets stuck with a spear. And then he's gone. And I'm like, like 2 minutes, Celebrimbor in the finale, you sons of bitches. You should have given us more. Absolutely fantastic. Sauron has a little tear. What's he crying for? He's not crying for Celebrimbor. He's crying for the fact that he knows that Celebrimbor was right. He knows that Sauron is literally just a puppet, or was just a puppet, and in the shadow of Morgoth. He will never be as big as Morgoth. He'll never be as powerful. But of course, the orcs come in and we devise a little plan. Fucking fast forward then, and we find Galadriel. There we go. There's a name. Yeah. I even remember names this time. Galadriel's running through the forest. I'm like, is she not supposed to be 50 miles away from here right now? She's only leaving the city now. How fucking slow is she? Jesus Christ, be a run, woman. She gets into the forest. She gets accosted by orcs, and of course, there's Adar. But not the Adar we know. You're like, oh, Adar is a fucking elf again. And he's healed, and he looks absolutely amazing. I'm like, he looks great. This is fucking amazing. his faithful orc comes along that's badly injured, and oh, what happened to you? My son, I'll heal you. Oh, you get shanked. Oh, shit. And I mean, he got shanked about 50 million times. And then, of course, we have the betrayal. And there's Sauron, and he goes after the rings. I'm like, you son of a bitch. Why? Just give us a couple more episodes of Adar, please. He was amazing. And we got teased another name. We got teased a name. Were they going to name him as somebody that we could potentially know from lore? I think so, but I think we're never going to hear about it now. It was just teased. But it's all about the eye of the beholder and what you wanted it to be. So it could be somebody that never was, or it could be somebody who was famous, like a son of Fëanor, who a lot of people think it was. We then head to far, 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 far east, where Gandalf's still looking for his fucking... the stranger is still looking for his staff.
Spoiler!
Spoiler alert. He's still looking for his staff. And for whatever reason, this whole scene was ruined for me because the telly I was watching it on is adaptive and I couldn't see it. It was as dark as the Battle of Winterfell. I'm like, what the name of Jesus happened? I can't see a thing here. We have the guy who kind of resembles Saruman, but we don't really know. And oh, we're good old friends. I'm like, you're good old friends? What the fuck's going on here? But it was 5 of us sent to Middle Earth. It was like, well, clearly you're a fucking wizard. Clearly you're Saruman. You're not going to be one of the Blues. Just fucking say who you are, you son of a bitch. And then the people that he's been under him, he just casually decides, yeah, we're just going to fuck you against the wall here, and I'm actually going to go with my friend here. So me and my friend are going to fuck off, and you can die, and the Harfoots can piss off as well. And Gandalf was like, no, you're not, I'm here to save my friends. Well, fuck you and your friends. Here's the mountain. You're going to eat it now, and throws a fucking mountain on top of them, and then casually fucks off. You're like, what the hell's going on here? Like, what the hell? We head over to Numenor. I can't remember what the fuck is going on. Oh, yes, they're rounding up people because they're part of the faithful.
Yeah.
Fucking Isildur's daughter is finally like, oh, I might have picked the wrong side here. Oh, shit. Why should pick the wrong side? His fucking dickhead king and his even equally wanker of a son. It's just they're killing people. They're slaughtering people. They're taking people to the woodshed. Hop the fuck on, you stupid bitch. We head back. Jesus Christ. We head back to Eregion where King Gil-galad and Elrond have been captured and they're going to be murdered. All the collective works of Celebrimbor has been burned in front of them. And then we see an arrow flying by. I'm like, is this an elf? No, it's the fucking dwarves have finally come. They finally made it there. You're only a few hours late, you stupid little bastards. They get in. They knock the bollocks out of dwarves. Sauron has a little fight with Galadriel. She decides, well, fuck you, Sauron. You're not getting my ring, and you're not killing me either. I'll go kill myself. Fucks herself off a cliff. She gets rescued by.
Why did she go Southern American? I'm gonna kill myself.
I go kill myself. Go fuck you, Sauron. I'll kill myself. Throws herself off a fucking cliff. The dwarves come, but it's too late to save Eregion, so they take the survivors and go to a little known valley just up the road that, beside a river and maybe a bit of a dell going on there. And they decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to be holed up in our houses, or are we going to fight? And they decide, we're going to fight. They put their swords up, and we end the show, right? No, well, but we have to go back before we end the show there, because
the credits rolled, and then
the credits rolled. Like, shit, we forgot a bit. We have to go back. We have to go back to the east, where the poor Harfoots, their homes have been destroyed, and they have to go and meet the other Harfoots. So our 2 little friends, who I can't remember their fucking names, decide to say goodbye to the Grand Elf, and he was like, oh yeah, Grand Elf. Yeah, you're a Grand Elf. Yeah, can you say it that many times in one fucking episode? Grand Elf, Grand Elf, Grand Elf. Yeah, we know, we get it. He's Gandalf. Shut the fuck up. He's walking along. He's then walking along, and he trips over a stick that Nori just had in her hand 5 seconds ago. Oh, this is nice. This kind of looks like a staff. Oh, it was a test all along. Fucking Trixie Bombadil, you. Ah, come on, Gandalf. Sit down. We'll have a pint of mead, and we'll sing a song. We go back. They raise their swords in the newly founded Rivendell.
They're still raising the swords.
And they're still raising their swords. They had to wait for me to come back so early. Fuck's sake, Gerry, hurry the fuck up.
And the arm's getting sore.
And the show ends.
Yo! Do you see what I mean, guys? Do you see what I mean? Born to do it. This is like 2 years of doing alt recaps. Gerry comes along with zero prep and just fucking destroys it. Amazing, amazing, unbelievable. Gerry, you deserve that drink. That was phenomenal. I think I enjoyed you recapping it more than the episode itself, but I really enjoyed this
This
episode.
was a great episode.
This
A great
was
episode.
phenomenal. Let's start with yes, we've been dying to get to it. R.I.P. to Durin the Third. My God, my God, if you like anyone who's not watching this show, what are you doing? This is the stuff. This is, and I agree with what you said in your alt recap that it is like up there with anything in Lord of the Rings from beforehand. I was literally screaming at the screen as it was happening. I was like it was so intense. The Balrog scene, but not only that, it's how they tied everything together. Because you and I were discussing this, and we kind of saw a lot of this coming because they led us up to this point. It was clear where it was going. Okay, and we were disagreeing a little bit where you were like, I think they're going to fight, and I think Durin the Fourth is going to kill his dad. And I was like, I think they're going to like get in a scuffle, and then maybe Durin will fall, and he'll fall into the Balrog, but they'll never know the Balrog existed or whatever. But how they did it was so much better. This is why they're writing the show and we're not. JD Payne and Patrick McKay, because there was that whole element of, because it wouldn't have made sense for Durin to force to just attack his dad. He's shown us that he loves his dad. He's never going to do that. How he backed down immediately and tried to win him over with one last plea to love and talk about how they'd arm wrestle and this and that. And what I loved about this scene was that it just had a line that was instantly iconic. It's up there with, like, if you think of kind of Harry Potter, in King's Cross, and you had like Dumbledore being like, of course it's in your mind, Harry, but why does that make it any less real? A great Game of Thrones quotes like chaos is a ladder and so on, things that just stick there. What amazing writing, where as he goes to Durin, essentially knows he's running towards his death. He takes off the ring. Finally, he sees the damage that he's doing. He returns to himself and he realizes he needs to make this sacrifice. But turns around and says, I wasn't lifting my hand. It was you, just you, getting stronger. Holy fucking shit. And then he runs, and possibly the most iconic visual we've ever seen in Lord of the Rings. Like, it's up there with Fly You Filth. Like, it's up there with Gandalf. Like, fuck me, this scene. And then what I love most about it was the flex, because after that, you get the opening credits, and you're like, that was before the credits. That was before how good is this episode going to be? Unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
Like, again, this show is not perfect. This episode is not perfect. But when it is at its best, this show is delivering 10 out of 10 content that is up there with anything we've seen on television in the past 20 years. And this was one of those moments. Gerry and Tad?
To me, I see what you were saying there about kind of, it's like when Gandalf fought the Balrog on the bridge and you shall not pass and that type of thing. To me, I liken this, because we have to liken a Balrog to a Balrog. You have to. It's something as epic as that, or something like a Balrog or a Smaug or something like that. To me, this was, when the Two Towers came out on DVD, I was actually working in what's known as Curry's now, but it was Dixon's at the time. So in the Giver Centre, Dixon's. And we had the DVD, but we just had one scene on repeat on one of the high definition televisions to show you how good the television was. And it was the scene of Gandalf falling and fighting the Balrog. And this was every bit as good. And it was just around about the same length in time as well. This scene was not long. You've got the chat they had beforehand, and then Durin finally breaks through the wall. He goes in. When you see that mithril, you're like, holy shit, this is actually amazing. This looks fucking beautiful. And then the glow, you're like, oh, what's like Durin. I was like, Durin's kids are alive, so he could technically die. I'm like, don't kill Durin, for fuck's sake. I mean, the Fourth. Don't kill Durin the Fourth. So when you get that scene, and especially the when that quote that he says to his son, and he says when he says that, but then he calls him King Durin. You're like,
Oh,
bastard! He picks up the axe, and just the slow motion of him jumping, and then bang! And it's not like he doesn't get skewered. He doesn't get like caught in a hand. He literally explodes from the force of the sword of the Balrog. You're like, sweet baby Jesus, what the hell? Now, I was, we knew we were going to see the Balrog, but to what extent? I'm like, Khazad-dûm can't fall now. I'm like, no, because they're supposed to be kind of part of the last alliance. What the hell? What's going to happen here? So I was very happy with how they did it. I'm assuming, because it wasn't actually mentioned in it. The Balrog kills King Durin. Durin legs it back through the hole, and I'm assuming they sealed it up. That's what I'm assuming.
I think we saw that though, because did you see when he killed him? The
they started to rock,
going towards the screen. Yeah. So I think it automatically resealed it, which convenient, but okay, I'll live with it. Like, it's fine.
I can live with that.
And it also adds to the stakes of, they knew, because there was an implication in Khazad-dûm when we encounter it in was it in Fellowship or Two Towers when we were in there? I think it was Fellowship. I think it was Fellowship, yeah. And there was an implication that they didn't know about the Balrog, and then it just came up, and the dwarves' greeds and we saw that. That's what the running team was in this season. We saw how the ring made King Durin III greedy for the first time, whereas he never was predisposed that way. And essentially they consumed themselves by unleashing the Balrog. But now we know that all throughout history they knew this, which makes it really interesting when you get to the fact that at the end of this episode, and where we leave the Khazad-dûm, there's a succession rivalry now happening.
Yeah.
And it's easy to hand wave that as, obviously Durin's going to win, because Durin's the character we love. My favorite part of this show is Durin and Disa, by far my favorite characters. But how did the elves get back to being hubristic? How does that get us where we know we go, where essentially it was the doom of Khazad-dûm? Like, if Durin won, he would have warned everyone, and he would have been like, this is who we need to be, this is what we need to be careful with the rings. Maybe Durin's not winning. Maybe there's a tragedy ahead in this story. We don't know the finer details of this story. Like the book of Durin IV, unless I'm mistaken, is not written. This is the area that they have to play with, where they can tell us a new story. So we don't know how this pans out, but don't hand wave the succession war that seems to come with him and his brother.
No, I think you're right there. I think obviously they needed to continue the Dwarven storyline into the next season, because we know there are certain other elements that the elves are starting to mobilize now. They're going to go on the offensive. We've got stuff with Numenor. Where's Sauron going to go now that he has an army? So these are the storylines that we're still going to continue with. But we need to continue the Dwarven storyline, because they are an important part of it as well. And I definitely think you're right there. I definitely think Durin IV is not going to touch them rings. But those rings aren't just for Durin IV. In the lore of Lord of the Rings, they go to 7 dwarf lords. They don't go to 7 dwarf kings. So it's for 7 dwarf lords. So we have Durin the IV. He has a son who will presumably be Durin V. So there is going to be that succession there. But, is it a thing where Durin IV is going to be killed, someone's going to take over, and then his son gets the throne back? We don't know. This could potentially happen, which could be very, very interesting. I don't want to see anything happen to Durin, but this is we're going into Game of Thrones territory here, that we don't know what the fuck's going to happen, and anyone could die at any moment. You're like, I like this. I really, really do. Like, I really thought someone was going to die in this episode between the likes of Disa and Durin. I'm like, please don't kill one of them. Please, they've been amazing. Even when you see them at the press junkets together, they are like a married couple. They're absolutely fantastic together. I was like, please keep them together. Please keep them alive. It's been absolutely brilliant. I really want to see where this storyline goes. And the fact now that we know what the dwarves are going to be fighting over in the next season, it's going to be the succession, and it's going to be 2 brothers. We can hope that it's going to be Durin the Fourth that wins out, but we really don't know. I think the Balrog, I think we're done with that now. That we now know what happens eventually. I don't think we're going to see it though.
No,
They
I think that's it.
might
Yeah,
be mentioned, say at the last episode of the last season. This is what happened, blah blah blah, and we lead to Lord
yeah.
of the Rings. But I think we're done with that now. But I think it's been a fantastic part of the show. I would have liked to see more of it. Centralize more on that. I think we're going to get a bit more, especially with a new story in the next season. I think it's going to be great.
That scene, by the way, just before we move on, just to add that if you watch it's kind of cheesy, especially considering how good the show is getting. But Amazon Prime release Inside Rings of Power episode on their YouTube every week, and if you watch that, JD Payne and Patrick McKay were interviewed this week, and they said they were building to that scene since the very first writers' room. When this was conceived 5 years ago, and it paid off. It was worth the wait. They nailed it.
100%.
Absolutely amazing. Let's fly over to Numenor and also Pelergir, because that's related as well. We had Kemen arriving at Pelergir, and you had kind of Isildur and that whole situation going on. Isildur, but then you kind of go back over to Numenor, and you had ar-pharazon forging the letter between Miriel and Sauron to declare the faithful traitors. And then we saw him sentencing Miriel, but we didn't crucially see what the sentence was. We don't know what's to become of her. Elendil escaping and was given a sword that, for anyone who may not have been paying attention, is quite significant in Lord of the Rings lore and connects those two storylines in a specific way. So, Gerry, do you want to... And I think this is all safe to discuss, because I think the second they said Isildur, if you paid attention to the original movies, that's a name you should know. So I think we're safe to discuss kind of the. So talk us through kind of the significance of the sword.
In the first season, we see in the scenes that we have between Elendil and the Queen, you see a sword in the background, and people have been speculating, is that what I think it is? Is that what I think it is? So then when we're in the scene, and he was like, right, we need to go. We need to take the faithful and fuck off to the east of Numenor, back to where we're strongest. Let's go there. Come on, let's come with me. And she was like, I can't stay. I'm the queen. I have to stay here. But she hands him a sword. And this was one thing. Okay, I know I said earlier on about the rings. I'm like, they don't have to look exactly like the ones out of the film. But this was something they had to make it look like out of the film. And it was. She hands him fucking Narsil, the sword that will eventually cut the ring from Sauron's finger. Like, oh, Jesus. This was perfect. It was such a small scene. It was such a small thing. But huge implications. You're like, he has Narsil. It is Elendil at the end of the day. Elendil is something that when Aragorn charges into battle, he shouts, Elendil. I'm like, he's talking about the first king of Gondor. He's talking about the king that came over. So this is a huge thing. He finally has Narsil. We were like, this was something that a lot of people kind of wonder about. When is he going to get this sword? Or does he have it and it's just going to look different? No, he actually finally has it now. And even it mirrored the scene where in the Return of the King, where Elrond gives the sword to Aragorn, it mirrors that scene because he holds it up first and he's like, oh, and then he takes it out and you're like, it's exactly the same scene, but now we're in, oh, this is brilliant. This is fantastic. I'm loving these little callbacks to the films because clearly these guys that are making this show, not only are they Lord of the Rings books fans, but they are the movie fans as well. This is obviously what got them into it. They get it. They really, really do. So this was perfect. ar-pharazon and his crew are just a shower of bastards at this point.
I think it's worth noting as well that like it's Isildur who cuts the ring from Sauron's hand, and he uses Narsil or the White Flame to do it. And Elendil, obviously Isildur's dad, so we know that there's going to be some kind of succession there. Isildur now on his way back out to Numenor, which interesting implications, obviously, as Elendil has kind of just fled from there. I want to give a shout out to my boy Hagen, who has done nothing wrong here, but the worst scenario. I was only talking about this with a friend there the other day. What's worse than being cheated on? Someone trying to cheat on you and failing. And that's what happened here, because there was that awkward moment where Isildur's like, yeah, I'm taking your wife with me. And he just has to stand there. And it's just like, what? And then Kemen, the dickhead, comes along, but very funny outcome, comes along and is like, no, you're not. We're not taking Lowboard on the ship. And then Hagen and his wife just have to kind of coexist with the fact that she was leaving him publicly in front of everyone. Not a quiet conversation. She was like, I'm getting on that ship. I don't know that man. Who was her husband. And then they get left together. Amazing, amazing stuff. And Hagen's done nothing wrong. Often you'll get moments like this. Like we saw it in, for example, Shogun. And I thought it was one of the few Shogun, amazing, one of my favorite TV shows of the year. Have you watched it?
No.
Do it. You need to. It's amazing. But there's a scene in it where like there's kind of a tension between a married woman and an outside source, but the married man is a dick, you know, and that's the way shows will do it. Hagen's not a dick. He's just a normal guy. He's just a guy. If anything, he's a hero. And yeah, so shout out to Hagen, poor guy. We need to talk about Gandalf. Went to separate ways with Nori and Poppy. I hope that's not the last of them. But I loved this part of the season where they met up with the stores and they realized that actually the Harfoots are just kind of a breakaway pack from the stores, and these are all like kind of how the hobbits came to be. I'd love to get more into that. I hope we like with them leaving Gandalf behind, it isn't leaving them and that story behind, because I think it will, because I think they understand that like there was no reason for any derivation of Hobbit to be in this story, but they made time for it by adding the Harfoots and the stores and telling their story and putting so much time into it. I hope that that's not the last we see of them. But I want to talk about that scene because you referenced this. And we've been discussing this and we've been saying that's not Saruman. That's a like they got a great actor like Ciarán Hinds in to play the Dark Wizard. And he looks very Saruman-like, but we kind of been saying ourselves in our own chats that's a red herring all along. But it's Saruman, isn't it? Like today, this episode, it's Saruman. It's 100% Saruman. Like it has to be.
Well, we've been able to narrow it down now. We really have, because he's not just a Dark Wizard. If you listen to what he says in this scene with Gandalf, he said, Manwë said you would come. Okay, so we're talking about now the Valar. We're talking about being sent from the Undying Lands, and you know this is something. He said five of us were sent. So he's referencing the 5 wizards. So there's the 2 blues, there is Radagast, there's Gandalf, and there's Saruman. So we have now narrowed it down. Now, we know that the 2 blue wizards went into the east, okay? And they were never seen again. So it's potentially, we now have it down to 3 possibilities. So it's one of the 2 blue wizards and Saruman. Now, they're making it look like Saruman. He has a big black staff. He has a long beard and long hair and looks very Saruman-like, except he has black hair with a little bit of grey streak in it now. Now, what I think they're doing is that they are setting it up to be Saruman, and that he'll be in some way kind of redeemed, because he has been a bit of a dick. He's known as the Dark Wizard. He just casually killed his main lieutenant, captain, whatever it was, the guy in the gold mask. Just went, you're dead. Right, let's go. And do you know you did something bad there? I was like, and would you want me to put the knife back to your throat now? And it's like it is kind of Saruman-ish. Like Saruman was a dick. Like even in The Hobbit, he was a dick. Okay, he came along and he helped Galadriel and he helped Elrond. Fine, fair enough. And then he said, "I'll deal with Sauron." Clearly got corrupted when he touched the Palantir. But it's giving me all the Saruman vibes. He says to Gandalf, "My old friend." What's the very first thing he says to Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Ring? "My old friend." So it's Saruman. It has to be.
But the only thing is, right, it undercuts the twist that Saruman is evil in The Lord of the Rings, because it's like, how did Gandalf not know? You know, he's a dick and he's cocky and he's arrogant and he holds himself in high esteem when we meet him, but he's very much presented as an ally. Whereas this character is acting exactly like Endgame Saruman.
I think I know why.
Okay, go for it.
The reason I say it is that obviously when the wizards came down here, they weren't themselves completely. They just weren't. The fact that Gandalf didn't even know who he was, he didn't know he was a wizard. He didn't know where he came from. He didn't know his name. All he knew is that he had to go to where these stars were. And that's the whole thing about it, is he hadn't a clue who he was. So this dark wizard, whether it be Saruman or not, he knows a bit about what's going on. He even says to Gandalf, "You sent me here. It's you sent me here. The five of us are here because you sent me here." So it's a thing where he knows some of about it, but he's obviously something has happened along the way. And how do we get from here to Orthanc and being part of the White Council and being an ally of the elves and men, dwarves and whatnot? So I just think is that whenever they were sent down, obviously there was something happened to them. They lost memories. Things have happened. They're not what they were when they were in the Undying Lands or wherever it may be, wherever they were. So I just think is that he's kind of been not corrupted, but his memory is still not totally there. So I think we will have kind of a slight redemption, but we ultimately know what's going to happen with Saruman anyway. I just love the fact that we had that fantastic scene between the two of them. And, this episode, there was so much in it. I would have loved this to be spread out over 2 episodes to kind of flesh it out a little bit more, but I can't give out about it because it was fantastic. Each scene was great. This scene between Gandalf and the Dark Wizard was fantastic. It shows his power. The Dark Wizard's power is huge, that he practically picked up a mountain and dropped it on them. It was, well, that's what happened, because I couldn't see the fucking scene. I don't know. It's like watching a Battle of Winterfell. I was like, is somebody dead? Is there a flicker there? What's going on here? I couldn't see the flicker. It's one of those adaptive TVs. I need to sort that shit out.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a fantastic scene. I don't necessarily want the Harfoots, the Hobbits, or whatever you want, halflings to go. And he does. Gandalf does call them halflings. I'm like, oh, there, we're halflings. I think next season they're not going to be there. I think we have too much to get through. So I think they might be brought back for, say, a season 4. I think they're going to give them a rest.
Bran Starkey.
I think so.
I think so. I think that's fair.
Because there's so much now to do.
You
have the elves mobilized, and you have the succession with the dwarves. But we both know what the heart of next season is going to be, and it's going to be Numenor.
Yeah. Let's, before we get into next season, I do want to discuss just a couple of things. Again, Gandalf name formalized. It was a bit clunky because, again, he's technically Grand Elf. I don't know where he got to Gandalf from Grand Elf. That wasn't explained.
There was one other thing. Somebody called him a Gand.
Ah, okay.
Somebody called him a Gand.
And then, sat down and had a lovely moment and sang Old Tom Bombadil, a great song from Lord of the Rings. Loved it. But also, do you know what I was thinking? What kind of arseholes, sing a song about themselves? What kind of arseholes would even think of doing that? It's just, oh, shit, sorry. I'll turn that off. That was a mistake. Sorry. It just happens naturally. It happens naturally. Let me just get rid of that. Apologies, Gerry. There's technical malfunction there.
Yeah, good luck.
Gerry's gone. There's loads to discuss, and we are a bit tight for time, so I do want to get to some major deaths in this episode. We lost Celebrimbor, we lost Adar, we lost Glug as well. I want to give a shout out to Glug. Thoughts on kind of the main storyline with the fall of Eregion, and then the dwarves came along, Sauron, Galadriel, Adar. What's sticking with you around this?
I thought the siege of Eregion was fantastic. I thought the fall of Eregion was equally fantastic. It very much gave me kind of Osgiliath vibes. Is that the dwarves just not the dwarves, the orcs just swarm through and they're just killing people indiscriminately. They're burning as they go. They're born literally. This is why the elves can't make anything anymore, because the collective works of Celebrimbor, who's now dead, he just got skewered by fucking Sauron, is burning in front of them, and he's like, kill me, take me, I don't care, kill the king, fuck it, kill the king, kill him, just don't burn this, don't do this. And you're like, no, fuck you, and burns the fucking thing anyway. They're rescued by the dwarves. I thought that this whole sequence was fantastic. I would have liked to see it, I think, more of a grander scale, kind of like the way Dane helped Thorin in The Hobbit, that would have the big dwarven army, and it just comes in. So kind of seeing them come in kind of sneakily was good in a sense as well, but I wanted to see it on a more grand scale, but we just didn't have enough time in this episode. The major deaths though, you've got Celebrimbor. I wanted, he has been fantastic in this entire show. He has been absolutely brilliant. The corruption that he gets from Sauron, and he kind of sees it, and then it doesn't see it, and then sees it, and doesn't see it, and then finally sees it, and just throws it in Sauron's face. So to see him literally skewered with arrows, and the blood, he's covered in blood, it's coming from his mouth. You're like, oh my God, this is fucking. It literally is heartbreaking to see such a great character, a great actor do this. Sauron finally kills him, but not before he tells him, "You're nothing. I'm literally going to heaven. Once you do this, you kill me now, I'm going to heaven, and you will never be there because you're literally in the shadow of Morgoth, and you will never be as good as him." And
he's a slave to the rings as well. Like he's a slave. Like the rings control
he is the Lord.
him.
He even said, "You are the Lord of the Rings."
They don't need to go that on point though, because every time they say Lord of the Rings, the characters are like, "Oh," and it's like you don't know the name of the books.
Yeah,
I'm like, you don't know that that's the book. Like,
true.
So,
but for me, when he said that, and then died, and then the single tear from Sauron, he wasn't crying because Celebrimbor was dead. He was crying because Celebrimbor was right. Yeah. Because he's not as strong as his master, and he will forever be ruled by these rings. And even when Celebrimbor says, and one will come and destroy you, I'm like,
I that was something that bumped up against me though, because I'm like, again, that was a bit too knowing for me, because it's like, how could Celebrimbor know that? We've never seen any indication that he has psychic powers or he has visions or anything like that as well. He's wise. He's a great smith. That was just too, you don't need to be in your face. We get it. You know what I mean? You can just say the rings will destroy you and we can fill in the gaps, so
I thought
just saying great. One is just too much fan servicey. It's just too knowing, like, for me. I want to give a shout out to two very underrated characters. Glug and Adar both met their end. What I loved about Glug is they did more in this episode, and they're going to undo it now, but they did more in this season to humanize orcs than we've ever seen done in Lord of the Rings, in any of Tolkien's work before. And now we're going to see them be slaves to Sauron, controlled by the rings, and just go back to what we know as orcs. And that's tragic, because we know these are people that didn't want war. I liked Adar as well. Going back to his kind of Nenya, returned Adar's heart to its pre-orc state. I love the complexity they're treating the rings, where they're not all evil. There's good that can be done. They kind of understand and get that, and bring that across. I'd love, everyone's saying it, and I agree, and I think you'll agree, I'd love more Adar. But I think it's very much like Game of Thrones, where sometimes they do addition by subtraction, where you're like, how are they going to get by without fucking Tywin Lannister? And they do, and it makes the show stronger. They can give up a character at that level, and it's good. But also amazing performance as well. Just to give a shout out to Benji Stark, absolutely amazing stuff from him. He has
Benji Stark.
Yeah, he's Benji Stark.
He was Benji Stark was Adar in the first season, not the second.
What?
Yeah.
Did they change actors?
Yes.
What? I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not him in the second season.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's amazing. Okay, there you go. Oh, he was in Slow Horses. I love him. Okay.
I thought Adar was fantastic. The thing about Adar was that this was a completely made up character. He was never in the books, and it was something that so essentially, and I saw this from one of those docu things that behind the episode that they were doing this, that Adar was going to be killed off in the first season. And it was actually Tolkien's grandson who said, don't do it. He is fantastic. Keep him. Flesh him out more. Make it better. So when they flesh him out more, and they made it they humanized him, or should I say they elfized him. And then at the end there, where he puts the ring on and he's literally back to his pre-Uruk days, you're like, they're going to name him. And I'm like, the big thing about it was that because of the speech, because the way he said words, because he was talking about certain things from lore in the Lord of the Rings and from elf times previously, they were like, this is the lost son of Fëanor. Fëanor was the greatest elf that ever was, the greatest smith that ever was. He was just the best, and he had loads of sons, but they were all dicks. Like literally every one of them dicks, go around killing people. Like that's not what elves do. But he was going to be. People theorized he was going to be one of the lost sons of Fëanor, and the fact that they didn't name him, I thought was better, because at the end of the day, Adar was never in the story, so you can't just automatically time to someone else. But if you think he was the lost son of Fëanor, then he was. Or if you think he was nobody, then he was. It's all about your interpretation. And
like
that's
that.
what this show was. This has been fantastic. And you've got the grandson of J.R.R. Tolkien saying, keep him in it. He's brilliant. I love him. Yeah. If that's not the best fucking write-up you can get, then what is? So, what did you say? Glug was his name, was it?
Glug.
I thought his story was so tragic.
Brilliant.
It's very, very tragic, because he has a father, what he thinks the All-Father, he loves him. He's got a wife and kid. We've never seen that before in Lord of the Rings. Like, no, they were born in pits, weren't they? I'm sure they're going to be born in pits after this, because that's what Sauron just corrupts everything he does. So they're going to be born in pits now. To see that, he gets disillusioned. Obviously, Adar is he needs to get in there. He needs to get to Sauron, but he's now willing to throw his children away. That doesn't sit well with Glug. Glug then has one conversation with Sauron, and that's the end of it. And then what happens to Glug? He gets skewered by Sauron. It's such a tragic. You don't feel sorry for orcs. You don't. You're not supposed to, but you do with this. Yeah. This is what they've done with the orcs in this. It's been brilliant. The writing's been fantastic. Yeah. I can't wait to see what way they go with this. Now, obviously, they are now going to corrupt the orcs even more now. They are going to dehumanize them after they've humanized them in this, but it is a natural thing. It's not something that's not a bad thing.
It's something that they've never done before, like I said. But like, again, we know that orcs are essentially corrupted elves, and the hatred in their heart made them the way they were, to the point they changed their physical appearance, their mannerisms, and everything else. And then they evolved into their own species. They've really shown us that in this season full circle. Like, we saw Adar, and we're like, before and after, and then there's the what could have been had Adar been the one to lead them. There's what they could have been, and now what they become, and what we know they are. Very tight for time, so I'm going to get real quick. I do want to touch on season 3, even though we'll be waiting 2 years for it. We've plenty of time to discuss. What do you want to see most in season 3?
We've discussed this previously through our voice messages back and forth. I really do believe that the focal point of next season is going to be Numenor. Numenor has to be properly split between the al-pharazon side and the Elendil side. Exactly what he's going to do with the Queen, al-pharazon, I should say, what al-pharazon is going to do to the Queen. At the start of the season, when you see him become king, it was like, oh, they're really going away from the source material here when it comes to how he becomes king. I'm not going to get into it because it is spoilerish, so I'm not going to say it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. But by the end of the episode, you're like, oh, this could actually lead to what does happen in the books. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Very, very interesting. We have to see between season 3 and season 4. I genuinely think we're going to see 90% of it in season 3, and then the actual fall of Numenor in season 4. But there's so much that we have to get to two sides. The faithful will then eventually leave Numenor at the end of the day, because we need to then establish two kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor in Middle-earth. Now, when's that going to happen? I couldn't tell you, but it is going to happen. We are going to see in the next season Isildur's brother, which is fantastic. We're going to see his brother. Are we going to see a proper reconciliation between with the whole family? I think so, but it's going to be at the expense of the daughter. I think the daughter in the next season, because al-pharazon knows she's now betrayed him, or she's going to betray him, and that's what's going to happen there. So I think the focal point for this is going to be the absolute 100% division of Numenor, and we then have to see, how does Numenor fall? Now, again, I don't want to be getting into spoiler territory, but obviously it involves Sauron. It does involve Sauron. I obviously had a prediction that Sauron would be in Numenor by the end of this season. That obviously didn't happen. But I now realize I made a huge mistake by saying that, because there's actually so much to happen with Sauron. Sauron, the army, Mordor, and the Numenorians before he even gets to the island, because he will be going back Slight spoilerish there, but he will be going back. We know this anyway. So that's going to be the focal point. I think the elf storyline is going to take a back seat to it, I think, in the next season, simply because there's more to happen with Numenor than there is with the elves right now. The elves, they went to this valley. It's going to become Rivendell eventually. That's where Elrond is going to have his base. We're going to see how they mobilize. So this is not an overnight thing. They're not just going to have an army like that. They have to mobilize. So you've just seen one of the most beautiful elven cities that ever was destroyed. It's like the destruction of Gondolin. This is a huge deal for the elves. This is going to really set them back like so fucking far. They have to regroup. So there are other elves that we have to see. I can't fucking wait. I can't wait because there is an elf that even is in the Lord of the Rings. He's not mentioned in the films, but you see him at Aragorn's when he becomes king. They're in the city and he gets the crown. I can't remember what's the coronation. That's it. You see him beside Elrond, and and it's mentioned in the credits that that's who it was. But we need to see this elf because he's fucking amazing. He's one of the greatest fighters ever. We're going to see him in either season 3 or season 3 or 4, or we might even see. But we're going to see him because they can't not put him in. Again, I'm not mentioning names. I'm not going to go into it.
Nothing.
It's going to be fantastic. So I think we're now going to see Gandalf really discover his power. We're going to see the start of the fall of Numenor, and that's a big deal. How it falls. Like what they do to make it fall, because they were gifted this. The Numenorians were gifted this island by the Valar for services to the Valar. So to see it fall it's going to be fucking huge. When we saw that small scene in the Palantir in the first season of the water coming over the island, it's nothing compared to what's actually going to happen. It's going to be on a biblical scale. This is literally like Atlantis going into the ocean. This is like the Great Flood. It's going to be fantastic. So I think the focal point for next season, the fall of Numenor, or the start of the fall of Numenor.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I think what we're going to start seeing next season is going to be a resistance building season. We're going to start seeing the story. This is what I'm looking forward to. Not without getting into specifics. It's all going to start to coalesce.
Yeah,
it's been like 5-6 different storylines are taking place across the map, and I love the way the show does that and keeps you very in tune with where you are, what's happening here, where everyone else is, and what's happening in relation to that. But I think the map is going to start getting smaller. I think we might see a couple of meetings like the Council of Elrond and stuff like that as well. I think that's just, it's going to start getting smaller in a way, and they'll condense the storylines, but then the stakes go way up because everything that happens involves characters we love. And I cannot wait. And Gerry, I cannot wait to discuss it with you, which I'm sure we will in 2 years somehow, some way. Gerry, always a pleasure to have you on. Follow Gerry on social media if you haven't already. He's always busy these days. He's always up to stuff. So keep an eye for where you can see Gerry, and you'll see him at the Low Blow Survivor Series party as well. Tickets on sale probably next week, I'm gonna say. But Gerry, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. I've been Ger Leggett, guys. Thanks for listening. Until next time, where I will be back with David Kent later this week. We've got a lot of sport to catch up on, so we're gonna try and get it all into one. This has been page 180, and sometimes what's broke is broke and can't be fixed. All you can do is try to build something new.